Hoax by NuekerFilms Part 1. When I was 17 years old, I created a monster. Although my intentions were never vile, I do admit that in the dwindling years of my childhood, my careless actions whilst on a quest for adrenaline were solely responsible for spawning a truly malicious creature, the likes of which I had never encountered up until that point. It was because of my unfamiliarity with the realm to which this creature resided, I suppose, that I approached the entire situation with an unremarkable amount of caution and, consequently, allowed others to suffer a great deal due to my ill-preparedness. Once I had laid the framework for this monster to emerge, I was quickly thrust into a reality that I knew far too little about, and I was forced to come to terms with my own carelessness in the form of something I feared more than death itself. Let me start from the beginning. From the time that I was born to the time that I attended college, the small and highly insignificant town of Arup, Alabama, was the place I called home. However, to describe the town as insignificant would be an understatement, and frankly too large of a compliment. With a population of no more than 7,000 people at its peak, if someone took a dictionary and looked up the word forlorn, they'd find a picture of Arup in its glory days. The town itself was an accident. Our town founder, Stephen Tuttle Thompson, had originally intended to name the town after his son, Arade, but had accidentally misspelled it as Arup when he applied to make his township official. Needless to say, Arup is nothing more than a product of a careless error, evolving into wasteland for local businesses and child's hellscape, with only a rotting super Walmart on the edge of the town to serve as a place for entertainment. Or else suffer the costly and often bothersome trip to the nearest city over half an hour away if someone wanted to go see a movie or go for a round at the lanes at Bolo Rama, a favorite amongst kids my age. And so it was a consequence of this desolation that I was coerced into participating in local sports and school clubs into my high school years to keep my idle mind occupied, the hefty majority of which I either flatly loathed or simply was not nearly proficient enough at to judge whether it was fun for me. I suppose, in a way, that these clubs were beneficial to me, in that they tricked my mind into believing that Arup had more to offer than a mediocre football team and an unreasonable number of churches for such a small area, 7 to be exact. The club that I found the least agonizing was my high school's theater department, more so due to the people it was comprised of than the actual program itself. I auditioned for the fall production of Bye Bye Birdie early in my junior year out of a longing to escape the monotony of school to homework to back to school again. I had subconsciously fallen into. I was fortunate enough to receive the highly revered rule of male chorus 3, and I found myself very quickly attracted to a core group of 6 friends also in the cast primarily for the same reason they were attracted towards me, because we all had nothing better to do and nobody better to do it with. Among my new group of friends were Isaac, the resident self-proclaimed macho man in a group otherwise comprised of more ellipsis effeminate ellipsis members, Caroline, a natural-born leader, as described by her teachers, that could very easily turn into a meticulous control freak when given enough power, but I never minded in our 7 years of friendship. Riley Grace, Isaac's longtime neighbor turned arm candy once they reached the high school. Grant, who was a bit of an eccentric that was keen to follow the group mentality. Cameron, the only openly gay man in the entire theater program. He had acquired the nickname of Loose Lips for more reasons than just his outspoken nature. And lastly there was Elizabeth, the quick-witted yet reserved blonde whom I had been friends with since diapers. She possessed a natural grace and subtle charm that I had admired for years, but was too scared to actually come out and say, often resulting in me openly making a fool of myself in front of her. She was new to the program. Thanks to my prodding, Caroline had quickly become attached to her and the rest of us gladly adopted her as our own because, like the rest of us, she didn't have any other place where she belonged. It was the first week of October of that year when I finally came to the realization that I was trapped in a makeshift prison for another 2 years that served no other purpose than to thieve away my spare time and claim it was for the further development of my brain. Given my previously expressed sentiments towards my hometown, it should come as no surprise that my mind quickly turned restless. By this point, our theater department was in full swing with Birdie, and what was once a fun escape from the repetitive nature of life every other weeknight from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock had quickly reverted into yet another routine, crafting a new form of the familiar monotony of school, except with longer nights, intense choreography rehearsals, and the inescapable dread I felt inside the 2 frequent times I messed up in front of my director. And in only a matter of days, I again found myself back where I had started in my quest to alleviate the boredom in my life, and so I decided to get creative. It was nearing the middle of October so, naturally, I was drawn to the more sinister realm of horror as my new source of entertainment. Let's do something this Friday after rehearsal. I introduced the subject during the water break. Alright, then, what do you suggest? Caroline inquired. Well, it's Halloween, so I was thinking we do something scary. My proposal was met with a combination of raised eyebrows and disinterested silent glances. Like what? A haunted house? Isaac laughed at the idea of indulging in something so childish. The only decent haunted house anywhere near here is all the way in Birmingham, and I don't want to drive all the way there and back, especially after a rehearsal. Grant huffed. Yeah, ellipsis, and I don't really do scary things to begin with, so no. Caroline dismissed the notion altogether. Well, I want to do something, ellipsis. Elizabeth spoke up timidly, in the face of opposition. Ooh, I know. Cameron jumped into the conversation. Let's go roll someone's house. How does that relate to anything scary? I asked. Spooky toilet paper? His comment was met with a collection of moody laughter, but for as humorous as Cameron's idea was, it gave me a new idea. What if we were the something scary? I proposed, much to the confusion of the others in the circle. I continued my pitch. Let's go into people's yards, knock on their doors or leave a creepy note or something, and creep them out a bit. Everyone continued to stare at me, now more concerned than confused. That sounds fun, ellipsis, if you're asking for a death wish. Caroline was the first to speak up. What if someone comes out and starts attacking us? What if someone calls the police? Isaac reveled in this new spin of danger. Both Riley Grace and I sensed Isaac's interest growing, but she was the first to take advantage of it. Isaac, your dad's a cop, Riley Grace choked out. You're not going to take that big of a risk, are you? We could all get into some serious trouble if we get caught. But we aren't going to get caught. We'll do it to somebody we know who won't get mad for us pulling some dumb prank, I pitched. And if we end up getting caught and they are mad, we can clean up whatever we messed up. It's like rolling a house, but more festive. I was aware that my idea sounded strange, but I was insistent upon not spending another weekend watching Netflix on someone's futon or playing cards in my basement. It sounds fun enough. Let's do it, Cameron said. If Cameron's doing it, I'll do it too, Grant joined in. Isaac succumbed to the peer pressure next. You know what? Why the hell not? I like the risk. Are you serious? Riley Grace looked on with distaste. I've got nothing better to do. And besides, with Cameron and Grant there too, I'll have a better chance of running away and someone else getting caught instead. Isaac started to laugh. I noticed the guys discreetly glare at Isaac for theoretically throwing them under the bus. Isaac looked back at them and defensively held his arms up halfway above his waist, as if to say, it was a joke, but he did so with only the slimmest amount of sincerity. I am not putting myself anywhere near that situation, Riley Grace concluded. That's possibly the dumbest idea I've ever heard, so count me out too. Caroline echoed Riley Grace's sentiments. I looked toward Elizabeth and grinned. Anyone else? I watched Elizabeth begin to form words with her mouth, but then she caught Caroline's gaze and she was immediately stunted. Their shared gaze was followed up by a hushed whisper from Elizabeth, followed by another wide-eyed glare from Caroline. Although their exact words were incomprehensible, Caroline's condescending stare illustrated her entire argument. Okay, so how are we going to do this? Isaac jumped in. More like to whom? Grant continued. What about Maggie Yancey? Cameron gestured toward the stage where our potential victim was posed dauntingly on the stage in the midst of blocking a scene. The Pris strutted oh so arrogantly along the proscenium with that smug leading lady smirk. She had acquired the reputation of being a slimy and malicious spoiled brat throughout her high school career, and she remained a vicious jungle cat, the leader of the pack in the theater realm, preying on the frailty of insecure geeks to establish her dominance as our predetermined leading lady. Let's shake her up a bit. I beamed with excitement at the moment Maggie was pulled into the picture. I knew both Grant and Isaac were also rocking with excitement at the chance to harass the untouchable prick and, more importantly, get away with doing so. What happened to this being harmless? Riley Grace spoke up. That seems pretty cruel. There's nothing wrong with giving someone a little scare, Cameron retorted. And besides, the bitch deserves it. She needs something to knock her off her pedestal. I am not getting involved in that. I don't intend to make enemies. Caroline folded her arms in protest. The other girls concurred with Caroline, stood up, and migrated onto the stage, leaving us conspirators to our own devices. Well, for those of us without sticks up our asses, let's get planning. She lives in the Cherokee Ridge community, a couple streets down from me. We use my pin to get in through the gate and walk from there to keep the noise down. We'll be gone before anyone knows we're there. Sound like a plan? Our confirming nods had, in an instant, simultaneously solidified our reckless perceptions and the imminent danger we would soon face. That Friday afternoon ushered in a drastic and rather premature shift in the weather. Over a span of a few weeks, the temperate faded blue sky had devolved into a bleak gray shadow of its former self. The leaves which had been highly venerated in their treetop thrones during their summer reign had all but dwindled out of existence, their vibrant complexions comprising of oranges, yellows, and reds that had for so long demonstrated their nobility had slowly retreated into their feeble uniform shade of brown. The blanket of night had grown more comfortable with these new conditions as well, timidly aggressing from its lair to crawl across the sky earlier and earlier each day, casting a seemingly ever-present darkness onto our town. But what marked that day as so significantly divergent from the normal weather patterns as of late was the onset of a frigid winter chill. Although my town had acquired a reputation for exceptionally cold winters, they were not cold enough to carry with them the inherent mountains of snow or anything in that vein of merriment. Every winter for the last 18 years had merely consisted of frigid rain and the occasional layer of frost caking car windshields in the morning. The rehearsal that night was nothing remarkable. We practiced our choreography, we sang our voice parts, and we walked through the scenes we had blocked up until that point. But all of that stimuli was gradually consolidated down into white noise in my mind as the night drew nearer to its close. My thoughts concerning the act I was about to orchestrate with my friends were flooded with the combination of anticipation and unease. When the wall clock struck 7 p.m., all of the students rushed the edge of the stage, their shackles to the theater broken on the dot. I fell back to group up with Grant and Cameron, who were waiting to escape out the back door. "Where's Isaac?" Grant asked, looking around the stage to see if he got caught up in another conversation. "I thought he was already with you guys," I suggested, slightly puzzled. "Oh, go figure." Cameron pointed out towards the mezzanine where the rest of our friends had clustered together. And standing right in the middle, wrapped around Riley Grace's finger, was Isaac. She had placed her arm on his and she glared at him ever so disconcertingly. I had watched Riley Grace lecture Isaac for over a minute without ceasing when he extended his arm just enough to graze the tips of her fingers, clearly illustrating the exact moment Isaac had become Riley Grace's subservient. "What a bitch," Cameron antagonized Isaac's faltering character. We walked up to the mezzanine to investigate what had just happened, and caught the collectively condescending glare of the girls. "What are you guys doing?" I asked, catching Isaac's gaze out of the corner of my eye. "We're having a big, safe, legal bonfire at Elizabeth's house right now. You guys are welcome to join." Caroline peppered her hollow invitation with yet another disheartening jab at our intentions, emphasizing each point. "Well, actually, we already have plans," I shot back, slightly pompous. "Doing what?" "Isaac's coming to the bonfire. Why aren't you?" I looked in his direction, my expression taking on a shape of malice. He looked back at me and shrugged his shoulders as if he were actually confused as to why I would be mad at him for bailing. "What's wrong, Noah? It's better to spend the night sitting with friends instead of in a jail cell." Caroline cut into me even deeper. I admit I got more flustered than I probably should have, but again Caroline had gotten her way through guilt-tripping and shaming people for thinking in a way adverse to her own. "Okay, fine. If it'll make you guys feel better, we can go to your dumb bonfire thing," Cameron suddenly conceded. I turned my attention towards him, radiating the same amount of aggravation in my expression. "And just as a peace offering, we'll go buy some snacks first. Are Doritos and Dr. Pepper okay?" The girls nodded giddily. I noticed Isaac and Cameron lock eyes for a moment, and nod slightly as if they were reticently cementing a plan. "I'll come with you guys." Isaac hurriedly made his way toward the outer part of the circle near where we stood. We agreed to meet the girls at Elizabeth's house in an hour before escaping out through the back door. From the moment we hopped into Cameron's car and turned onto the road going the opposite direction of the store, I began to grasp what their true intentions were. "We're not going to get snacks, are we?" I croaked out. "No, we're not going to get snacks, genius," Cameron mocked from the front seat. My heart swelled with a mixture of reinvigorated excitement in our mission and an unease surrounding our deceit. I didn't necessarily feel comfortable with lying to my friends, especially about something they had already condemned. Grant spurred my thoughts on as he turned around to talk to Isaac. "You're welcome, by the way." "Isaac, you need to grow a spine for once," Cameron chimed in. "You hardly see us anymore because of her. She's such a control freak," Grant picked back up. "You haven't been yourself for weeks because Riley Grace wouldn't want you to do something dangerous. You're not fun anymore." Isaac readjusted himself, preparing his defense. "Well, I care about her. I want her to be happy, and that means I'm not going to be so ellipsis me ellipsis." This was met with exasperated grunts from the car. "So, you're just gonna change who you were for some girl?" Cameron interjected. "What does it matter to her what you do in your spare time?" Grump's final point managed to sway my contrasting emotional states in favor of rejuvenated excitement. I could also tell through Isaac's waning defense that he shared a similar thought. "I mean, as long as nobody gets hurt, what's stopping you from having a little fun?" My input incited a round of hearty whoops and laughs of agreement from the rest of the car, and it quickly became our mantra for the rest of the night. Our car rolled up to the Cherokee Ridge front gate shortly thereafter, and I immediately felt a massive weight pile onto my shoulders. I became overwhelmed with a sudden dread as we parked the car off to the side of the road near a construction site. I was brimming with apprehension as to whether our childish provocations would actually yield success. I paused for a moment to take in my surroundings. The starless sky displayed a mix of an inky dark blue shade and a vibrant purple hue closer to the horizon, the product of the numerous street lamps in the area. The street in which we stood was nothing less than desolate, reticent, seemingly void of any semblance of life, or better yet harboring its usual residence in the thick barrier of trees that enveloped me. The practically identical, red brick houses lined the street on both sides in a uniform formation. The white marble monoliths that stood silent and daunting on each front porch seemed to serve as their master's guardians, deterrents for the most vile and mysterious threats. I have to admit they served their purpose. Well, as they loomed over me, observing me, I assumed the role of the invader in a foreign land. "Well, are we going to do this or what?" Grant blurted. "Come on, the girls are waiting on us." And so, we hesitantly began our expedition to the home of the High Bitch herself, wading through a heavy layer of low-lying fog while simultaneously lumbering over fences and ducking into the forest to avoid detection. The low-lying fog served to mask my boisterous movements, but also managed to hinder my progress as I trudged through the interwoven branches, shrouding the whole of my surroundings in mystery. I couldn't take a single step without grazing a splintering stump or toppled tree trunk blocking my way. A sliver of light from the crescent moon pierced the cage of branches above our heads, casting light onto a small clearing in front of us. In the edge of the light, I caught the outline of another house. It was the same shape as all the others, but the decorative flag sporting the cursive Y indicated we had stumbled upon our target. That flag stood for nothing more than a symbol of gratuitous flaunting, which fit her personality perfectly. The moon's guiding light granted me a new sense of confidence in my journey, as if some higher being was silently leading me in the right direction, encouraging me to carry out the deed. I approached the tree line, the others close behind me. I glanced around at my friends. We each stood waiting for the others to make the first move. "Where do we start?" Isaac asked. I simply stood overwhelmed by the grandeur of the house and the open plain of freshly cut grass in front of me. After another moment, I stepped with trepidation past the line of trees and set foot in the backyard. Isaac followed suit, more confident than me. I turned back towards Grant and Cameron, who branched off in separate directions, moving around to the sides of the house. I took note of a motion sensor light above the back door and alerted my cohorts to steer clear of it. However, at that moment, I came to the realization that my plans had not been thought out past this exact moment. I halted my steps and panicked slightly. I directed my attention towards a trash can near a shed to my right and, because I didn't have any better ideas, I kicked it over, spilling the contents all over the backyard.